My guest for this session is Juanita Rasmus. Juanita is co-pastor of St. John's United Methodist Church in Houston, Texas, with her husband, Rudy. Juanita and Rudy came to St. John's in 1992 with 9 existing members, and it's now grown to nearly 9,000, with about 1/3 of those being homeless people. She is the founding board member of the Bread of Life, a homeless project. It serves 6,000 meals each month, emergency clothing, job training, showers, laundry, medical, dental, HIV services, even a haircut. In 1999, they built the Center for Hope. That's a home for children who have been born with special challenges, such as prenatal exposure to HIV or drugs or difficult home environments. Rudy has written this book, Touch, about their work at St. John's. And Juanita's the mother of 2 daughters. Give us their names.
Morgan and Ryan.
Morgan and Ryan.
Yeah.
I've met them and they just shine.
Thank you.
Thank you. You are a wonderful mom.
Well, thank you.
Now, we're working in this session on the social justice stream, the compassionate life. Remember, the social justice stream is referring to justice and shalom in all human relationships and social structures. Tell me, Juanita, how this particular stream of life became important to you.
Well, you know, Richard, it actually started when I was a little girl. My father was involved with some very local grassroots civil rights movement projects and activities, and I remember the one that probably stands out for me the most is there was a bank in our community that would not hire African Americans.
Really?
And so my father, along with some of the other civic leaders in our community, decided that they were going to protest silently. And so they went around to all the businesses who were primarily black in the neighborhood and the individuals and got them to make their deposits in pennies. Needless to say, after a lot of overtime had been paid for counting all those pennies, they managed to find someone who was black to be able to work in their bank. So that worked. And so that was kind of the beginning of my seeing how we can make a change.
That's nonviolent direct action in the most direct way.
Absolutely.
Well, you know, can you give me anybody out of the social justice stream, maybe a contemporary person or someone who's been a model for you?
Cool. There are 4 people that I would say have been models. On a global basis, I'd say Oprah Winfrey has shown the power of influence. And then on a national basis, our Congresswoman, Sheila Jackson Lee, has been a woman who's understood the power of the political system. And then in our city, we have a councilwoman, her name is Ada Edwards, and she's done an outstanding job of showing the power of passion and how that passion can make a difference in the lives of the least of these.
Wow.
And if I had to say one personally, I'm a little biased, but I would say Rudy personally, because he's shown me the power of unconditional love and acceptance.
Yeah. Well, I've met Rudy and been at your church. I know what a life he gives to that whole situation. The work of social justice, I mean, there are 9,000 folks now, and 1/3 or so are homeless. There's great need, great difficulty. Sure. I know you've had to deal with that because that can drain your energies, that can take life.
Absolutely.
I know you've had difficulties, trials. Can you just share anything out of that experience?
Well, can I talk to you about the Great Depression of '99?
Yeah, right.
In 1999, we had been there for about 7 years or so at St. John's.
Yeah.
And one morning I woke up and literally thought I wasn't going to live. And I began to experience what I later found out was a major depressive episode.
Yeah.
Well, what I've learned from that, Richard, is that we need balance in our lives, and particularly when we find ourselves working with so many people with so many great needs. And I realized I wasn't taking care of my mind, I wasn't taking care of my body, I wasn't taking care of my emotions. And when I say taking care of my emotions or mind, I wasn't doing things that cultivated interest for me, that helped me to stay vibrant in the work that we were called to do.
Right. Is there a particular scripture, for example, that might sum up the social justice stream for you?
Well, I think Matthew 25 does a great job of
Yep.
that. It
Yep.
says, when I was hungry, you fed me. And of course, this is Jesus talking. He said, when I was naked, you clothed me. And it goes on to talk about needs being addressed and being met. The thing that I appreciate most about that passage is at the very end, it says, and when you've done this for the least of these,
Yeah.
you've done it also unto me. And that's really what social
Even
justice...
a cup of cold water, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely, most assuredly, a cup of cold water. It's that simple.
Or
Finding,
coffee. There you are.
for
huh?
those who like caffeine.
Well, in all of this, is there an experience out of St. John's that you've had that just jumps into your mind to represent kind of this work or the social justice life?
Well, you know, when you think about the fact that this also talks about peace and working for peace and shalom, the idea for me of shalom is that not necessarily have the conditions externally changed, but something internally has changed. I have a good friend and a member of our church. His name is Amber, and his story is told in Rudy's book. When Amber came to St. John's, he was a cross-dresser. And so he dressed as a woman for most of our services. After a period of time, and he has a long story, but basically he had been abused by men most of his life, and sexually, emotionally, and in other ways. What happened for him is, out of coming into a community that had offered unconditional love and acceptance, and the support of men who didn't want anything from him, but only wanted the best for him. Amber has made a transition and a personal choice that he wants to be a man and all that that means. And so when you talk about seeing change, that's the kind of benefit that working in this arena can offer us, seeing lives change.
You know, the social justice stream is one of those areas that can consume our lives, but we need to think in terms of integration, don't we? How does the social justice stream fit with all these others that we've been discussing?
I'm really glad you asked. Ecclesiastes, the fourth chapter, and I think it's around the 11th verse, says a threefold cord is not easily broken. And so I want to suggest that the streams provide us with a sixfold cord.
There you are.
And when we bind them together, life is not easily broken. Our opportunity to provide peace is made available through the integration of all of those cords.
You know, for me, one of the great advantages of the social justice stream is it gives, it's love with skin on it. It gives bite to our Christian expression of concern, and that's one of the great things. I know there's difficulties, I know there's pitfalls, and I bet you've seen some of those.
Well, just a few. I think the first pitfall is probably burnout. Unfortunately, so often we get what's called compassion fatigue, because you're so involved with trying to provide the needs for others that often we take a back seat on our own self-care and soul care. I think the second thing would be alienation. Believe it or not, there are not a lot of people who are comfortable with the idea of providing for the least of these. And so often there's an alienation or a rejection. You work with those people, that kind of an attitude. In addition, I think isolation. People who do this work, particularly on a full-scale, full-time type basis, can often feel isolated. People who would normally in your social circle, who either have a point of view that's totally opposite from yours, or who are uncomfortable with the work you do. All of a sudden, Richard, the invitations to the parties, they drop.
That's right.
And then I think the last thing is frustration. But Jesus addressed that. He said, the poor will always be among you. And so one of the frustrations that we often feel is not having enough money, having such an overwhelming need, and wondering if we're making a difference, and not having enough volunteers, people who would be passionate about this work. So those are a few of the pitfalls, if you will, to this work.
I know that you and Rudy have developed a good friendship with Justin and Margaret Campbell. And I mean, to me, that's one of the lovely, just simple illustrations on a friendship way of reconciliation.